The NTSB preliminary report is out on the runway incursion that occurred back on 25 February between the FlexJet and the Southwest Airlines jet, where the FlexJet crossed runway 31 center without a clearance, missing the Southwest jet landing by just 200 feet laterally and 175 feet vertically. Let's check it out.
FlexJet 560, turn left on runway 4 left, cross runway 31 left, and hold short on runway 31 center.
Right, left on 4 left, cross 22 or 13 center, FlexJet 560.
FlexJet 560 negative, cross runway 31 left, hold short runway 31 center.
Cross 31 left, hold short 31 center, FlexJet 560.
All right, we'll take, we'll cross 2 left on hotel, Southwest 769.
Did you hear that? It was stepped on, but that was the tower trying to say, FlexJet 560, hold short, but the other guy was talking. Very busy, congested frequencies.
FlexJet 560, your instructions are to hold short of runway 31 center.
Now that we've briefly reviewed the incident, let's see the additional holes in the Swiss cheese model of accident investigation that the NTSB has uncovered in this preliminary report. Good job, NTSB, getting this information out to the public so quickly. Again, this happened back on February 25th at Chicago's Midway Airport. It was FlexJet 560 versus Southwest Airlines 2504. Southwest 2504 initiated the go-around while FlexJet 560 was crossing runway 31 center. As FlexJet 560 cleared the active runway, Southwest Airlines 2504 passed less than 200 feet behind the FlexJet. Southwest 2504 subsequently made an uneventful landing a few minutes later. Here's a 3D graphical representation of the ADSB data showing the Southwest jet in orange getting down to 25 feet above the ground before initiating the go-around and clearing over the top of the FlexJet by 175 feet and passing laterally behind the FlexJet by 200 feet. Now let's go with the pilot interview, starting with the Southwest crew first. According to post-incident statements and interviews, the flight crew of Southwest 2504 reported that they were cleared by approach control for an ILS to 31 center at Midway under visual conditions. Throughout the approach, the captain was the pilot flying and the first officer, FO, was the pilot monitoring. The crew indicated that they contacted tower at Runts and received the clearance to land on 31 center. The approach was uneventful, and we reviewed that data, and it was a nice stabilized approach. And the autopilot remained engaged until approximately 500 feet, not uncommon. As they continued the approach, both the captain and FO visually surveyed the airport and noted seeing a general aviation aircraft, that's the FlexJet, taxiing on a surface perpendicular to their runway and assumed it would be holding short of 31 center. The FO, the pilot monitoring in this case, indicated that after hearing the aircraft audible 100-foot call, remember the automation in the aircraft calls 100 and then 50, 40, 30, 20. So after he got the 100-foot call, in other words, he's getting very close to landing on the runway, he realized that the general aviation aircraft was not stopping and was going to cross into 31 center. The FO stated that he called for a go-around and the captain executed it. The flight crew indicated that standard go-around procedures were applied and the maneuver was executed smoothly and without incident. And as we saw in the data, by the time the go-around was successfully executed, the aircraft was down to about 25 feet above the ground. Good job, Southwest. Fast, professional reactions to that situation. Now let's go over to the interview from the FlexJet pilots. Remember now, the Southwest Airlines is operating under FAR Part 121, or airlines, And FlexJet is operating under FAR Part 91, General Aviation. Remember the three basic different levels of safety, if I dare call them that. Part 91, General Aviation, which gives us our most freedoms. Part 135 for charter type operations, and Part 121 for airline type operations. Part 121 is the most highly regulated and most restricted, and I might add the most safest level of regulation offered by the FAA. And FlexJet can do this because they operate a lot of these jets under fractional ownership. That's what allows them to operate under FAR Part 91. A good question a lot of you asked about this incident was, what were the runway markings like for this crew taxiing on the runway 4 left? And if we look at this dated Google aerial photo, we can see on this runway no hold short lines. But those hold short lines have since been painted onto the runway 4 left. And here in the report, they show the 3-1 center, 1-3 center hold short markings and runway signage on runway 4 left. So this is runway 4 left crossing, where it crosses 1-3 center, 3-1 center. So the FlexJet is parked over here at Signature Aviation, the FBO located on the west ramp near Taxiway Alpha, and they need to eventually taxi all the way across these active runways to depart on runway 22 left, located way over here. In order to do this, they got to eventually cross runway 1-3 center or 3-1 center, located right here, and they're going to do this via taxiing down runway 4 left. So while at the ramp at Signature, FlexJet got their initial taxi instructions. They were confused by those instructions and did the right thing by just staying in place, getting those instructions clarified before proceeding. So the FlexJet crew makes it down here from Alpha to Foxtrot, where when they were on taxiway Foxtrot, the ground control instructed them to turn left onto runway 4 left to cross runway 3-1 left and then hold short of runway 3-1 center. The flight crew initially read back the instructions incorrectly, as we heard earlier. However, the ground controller immediately reissued the instructions and received the correct readback. So this incident occurred about 8:48 in the morning, and according to post-incident statements, the flight crew of FlexJet 650 indicated that as they turned left onto the runway 4 left, right here, the sun was impeding visibility from the right side of the aircraft as the sun's coming up over the east there. However, they did not recall seeing any hold short line pavement markings or any other signs for the runway 3-1 left intersection, and they don't include that in this report. Is 3-1 left properly marked like 3-1 center is properly marked? So they did not recall seeing any hold short line or pavement markings or any other signs for the 3-1 left intersection as they taxied onto the runway 4 left, 22 right. They stated that taxiway Foxtrot and runway 3-1 left are in close proximity to each other, as you can see right here. And by the time the nose wheel had straightened out, they were likely already halfway across 3-1 left. They further stated that the runway 1-3 right, 3-1 left appeared to have a very similar width to the taxiways and that they had not recognized it as a runway. So they thought that was just another taxiway. Again, the FlexJet crew probably does not fly in and out of this airport an awful lot. So if the crew confuses 3-1 left for a taxiway, they're going to confuse 3-1 center for 3-1 left. The FlexJet captain stated that as he approached runway 3-1 center, he had thought it was runway 3-1 left. And as they approached the runway intersection, the crew stated that they both looked left and right and did not observe the Southwest Airlines jet on short final. As FlexJet 560 approached the hold short line for 3-1 center, the ground control instructed FlexJet 560 to hold short, but the transmission was not acknowledged. Well, it was not acknowledged because it was blocked, as we heard in the previous, just earlier. As they were crossing and exiting 3-1 center, they were contacted by ground informing them to hold a position. The captain continued to clear the runway intersection and subsequently stopped the plane so the tail was not over any part of the runway. Ground control requested that they taxi forward to clear the runway safety area and then hold short of taxiway hotel. Once the captain cleared the runway safety area, he stopped the plane, and ground control informed him that they'd crossed 31 center and provided a number to call for a possible pilot deviation. The crew was then instructed to taxi up here to N2, the North Triangle, more affectionately known in the industry as the penalty box, and that's where they were able to take the phone call and discuss with the tower what had just happened. Because this incident was so widely shown on legacy media, both companies got a hold of the NTSB about this incident the day of the incident, and the NTSB requested the flight data recorders and the flight voice recorders, but unfortunately the flight voice recorders were already overwritten due to the limited number of hours that the flight voice recorders can hold. So a Part 91 operator operating out of a very busy and confusing, dare I say, Part 121 airport, an airport with a lot of airliner operations, gets confused with the taxi instructions and the layout of the airport, confuses a runway 31 left, a narrow runway, for yet another taxiway, and confuses runway 31 center for 31 left. Add in a little sunlight from the far right side of the cockpit, blocking the possible view of the runway marking signs and the hold short lines according to the FlexJet crew, and that's just how fast things can happen, and is a powerful lesson for all of us on how to avoid these sort of runway incursions. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.